Welcome back to the Cowpox Bros podcast. Jason and I are just wrapping up another segment about life in a difficult state of being. And sometimes that state of being is Texas. This segment, we're going to be talking about something lighter, hopefully. Jesus Christ. Uh, NFL season opened up. Thank God. Saving us from ourselves, Jason. Football is here. Fantasy football is here. If you were lucky, you got a chance to kind of talk some shit with some of your bros about either picks that they made in that keeper league of yours, or make fun of the guy that was auto drafting because he was probably exhausted from work. Hashtag that's me. But yeah, the NFL season is upon us. It kicked off last Thursday, and it's been an exciting week so far because football is back. What were some highlights in your mind, Jason?
So the first thing stands out to me, which I'm a big standings guy. I got to know what the standings are, like who's in first, who's in last, who's winning, who's losing, things like that. So after the first week's over, the first thing that stood out to me is three divisions in particular. Two of them would be the AFC West and the NFC West. And they stand out because their teams in each division went undefeated for week one. They all won. None of them lost. So AFC West, Raiders, Chiefs, Broncos, Chargers, all won. As well as, again, the NFC West, Niners, Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks, all of them won. And now, obviously, I will say, as everyone knows, if you're a football fan, week one, yes, the wins and losses count. But what happens in week one is by far not an indication of what's going to be in week 18. That being said, the NFC West coming into this year was the favorites to be considered the best division in football. In week one, can't argue against that so far. So, and one thing somebody reminded me about this when it comes to the playoffs is that now that there's 7 teams that can get in the playoffs, it's possible for all 4 teams in one division to make the playoffs. It's possible.
That would be insane.
And to be honest with you, looking at the NFC West and their schedule, I'm like, I wouldn't put it past them. And plus, with the NFC not necessarily being the strongest, but yeah. Now, conversely to that, I mentioned the undefeated teams. There was one division in which its teams won no games. They were 0-4. And I can tell by the look on Terrence's face, he knows the division I'm going to mention. And unfortunately, it was the division that houses our Chicago Bears, the NFC North. The Lions, Bears, and Packers, oh my, and the Vikings all lost the week one games. Some, I will say, in worse fashion than others, but an L is still an L. That's the initial thing that stood out. I have some other stuff, but what do you think?
L is with Aaron Rodgers, then that L is exacerbated. That L is prominent.
I mean, I will say that makes me feel a little bit better about the Bears losing because it's like, okay, you know what? Bears lost, playing to the Rams, not the worst loss ever. Now, not that the Packers losing to New Orleans might not turn out to be a bad loss either, but losing by what they lost by. I mean, I'm going to mention my players of the week so far, in my opinion, which is going to involve that game. But yeah, they did not look great. I mean, again, like I said before, week one is not going to be an indication of what things are going to look like in week 18. Things could turn around for all these teams. We don't know. Stuff happens, is what it is. But yeah, they didn't look good, but I'm glad about it. What do you think about week one, bud?
Yeah, I was like, damn, Jameis Wilson actually looked like he could play. Shit. Drew Brees, who?
Or Taysom Hill, who for that matter? But yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even dignifying that. Fuck that. Yeah. What if like Jameis Winston just by not being in Tampa actually is like a really good quarterback? How wild would that be?
Well, I mean, I tell you what, bro. I mean, he was in a pretty decent offensive system in Tampa Bay, but now he's moving to a system with Sean Payton. I mean, we see he could throw the football when it comes to getting touchdowns, and he got 5 of them versus Green Bay, which, again, I'm going to go into that later, too. So, and he didn't have any interceptions. That was his problem in Tampa Bay. He threw the touchdowns, but threw a lot of interceptions. Now, some of that might have gone away with age and more experience. So it may be just because who was playing this week in the Packers. Um, but no matter what, like I said, he had 5 touchdowns. Nobody else in week 1 can say that. So kudos to him. I'm sure the Saints fans and other players love seeing that. So he didn't have a whole lot of yards, but my thought on that is, so what? He got the one stat that matters: 5 touchdowns.
Well, that and the win, but yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's important too, folks. Sorry, winning is important.
yes, yes, yeah, man. I was really excited. You know who was my player of the week? Kyler Murray looked fantastic out there.
Yep, that's a
Like
good
he was
one.
swinging that bad boy. He's like, nah, like y'all thought I was about this baseball. No, fam, I picked the right sport.
They got the offense out there in Arizona. He definitely has receivers for sure. That's even without Larry Fitzgerald.
It's crazy.
So yeah, they got the offense. So, um, what I'm going to find the most interesting is how those teams start playing each other within the division. Those games in particular, it's like all 4 of them. Those teams in particular, especially after seeing the Rams against the Bears. Yeah, that division. I'm looking at the schedule now to see when is the first time they play a divisional game with somebody, because I want to see that. I know the Colts fans here in Indianapolis got their taste of seeing the Seahawks. So I'm sure they didn't like what they had to taste. They didn't like what was in their mouth.
Sir,
Uh,
sir.
anyway, um, but yeah, definitely you mentioned player of the week, and Jameis was definitely mine for sure, based off what he was going through in Tampa, having to sit a couple years behind Drew Brees in New Orleans. Now he stepped in his first game, 5 touchdowns. Definitely number 1 on my list. Also, um, want to give a pretty good shout out to some other players as well. Joe Mixon, running back for the Bengals, 127 yards and a touchdown behind the Bengals' porous, very poor O line. Kudos
Right.
to him.
Like that.
Also, Tyreek Hill, 197 yards, 1 touchdown, in a very close game with playoff uh, team from last year, the Cleveland Browns. In that game, had he not done, also if he did, they Chiefs probably would have lost that first game. And definitely, I think we all agree Chiefs are a good team, but we also know that teams that lose the Super Bowl don't always have the best year rebounding coming after that. I don't think anybody expects that from the Chiefs because they are still good, but losing that game to the Browns would have put them not on a path that was, not able, they couldn't recover from. But still, those are the games like that you need to win against other teams that are likely going to be also in the playoffs. So, um, defensively, one thing I want to give a shout out to is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not that anybody should be shot; they played a good defense, but they did a good job containing Josh Allen against the Buffalo Bills. So, and they got a win. I did not pick them to get that win, but they got it. So, kudos to them on the defensive side. So yeah. But Terrence, I suppose we can't talk about Week 1 of football, being Bears fans, and not talk specifically about our Bears. So, what did you see? Did you actually see the game, the Bears game? I think you said you might not have
I,
potentially.
I slept through most of it. They were already down by like 15 by
Okay.
the time I actually got to tune in. So it was not looking good. I think they were already down 10-0. I was like, oh my God. Like, while it wasn't a blowout yet, it was abundantly clear that one of those teams was in a different gear. And I I just didn't have a good feeling about it. Um, I'm not gonna I'm not going to make a lot of commentary about it because to me it's like, yeah, it's just a run of the mill fucking offense, man. Like they don't scare anybody. They they don't have a defense. Defensively, I don't want to talk about their defense just yet, especially since the coordinator just started. But what I will say is, it was abundantly clear they look green. They look real green. We'll see.
Yeah,
Hope it's out.
yeah. I mean, some of part of me wants to give due to the Rams because they're clearly going to be a good offense this year. So, but you can't really give too. You really can't speak too highly of the defense when you give up 34 points, because that happened is what it is. I agree with you. Ideally, that's not going to be the regular thing every week, giving up that many points, and it probably won't be. I guess one test of that is next week we're playing Cincinnati. No offense to Cincinnati, but I mean, because after all, they actually won their game, so I guess I can't talk too much about them. But if they don't look good in a similar way against Cincinnati, then that may be what we have to go on. I I still put more. I mean, I was venturing with other Bears fans, which I know is always a headache every year. But of course, they're like every year, want to talk about the quarterback, blah 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 blah. But I go back to mention what I've been saying before is that, well, I could just mention the one game. I don't care who your quarterback is. If your defense gives up 34 points, whether it be Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, that's going to be a tough road to win, especially when you have a troubled O line like the Bears do. That people want to say, oh, well, that's why you should put Justin Fields in because he can move better in the pocket, blah, 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 blah. But I say back to somebody I said before that, you know what? You're right. The offensive line didn't look great. And maybe they should have addressed that in the first round of the draft because they had a pick to do it, but they didn't. So,
Why,
um,
oh, Jason? Correct me. Am I imagining things, or have the Bears just had a sorry ass of offensive line for the better part of 15 years?
I feel like there was at least one, maybe two. Okay, go back. So back when they had Jay Cutler, there are some years there where he actually had a good O line. Like back when they had like Olin Kreutz, the O line was fine around that time frame. I'm not saying they got bad once he left, but yeah, his time there, Cutler, that is, towards the end, definitely wasn't great. And I agree with you. Since then, it really hasn't been. They had some good players with Kyle Long and stuff. Um, so, but yeah, no, definitely not a great O line. Which again goes back to what I was saying before to I believe you as well on the show that first round draft pick. No offense to Justin Fields, should have been addressed with O line or even anything else that the Bears needed, like on defense. So yeah. But again, that can't. No, you go back and talk into that. So, but yeah, so I just really hope the Bears didn't look good. Some of that might have been the Rams, some of it might have been the Bears, some of it might have been Nagy. So
Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to be okay. Maybe these motherfuckers just didn't play a lot in the preseason, and they just look rusty. And well, the way the collective bargaining deal is set up anyway, it's like no one really wants to play in the preseason. Why? Because it's the preseason. Um, but yeah, hopefully they turn it around. Either way, Fields is going to start probably sometime this year. So
that is true. I mean, and despite what people want to say about Andy Dalton, I don't think it's going to be any fault of his. I think just they're going to be in a situation to again they're already 0-1, and even if you put the time clock on Justin Fields starting at say 5 games, what would it have taken record wise for Andy Dalton to keep his job? Would 3-2 be good enough? I'd say no. They probably have to be 4-1 or 5-0 for him to keep that job. If they're 3-2 or worse, I'd have to imagine that they're going to looking to start Fields. Now, the fact that Justin Fields got a touchdown in that first game, I'm sure didn't help Andy Dalton's case. Even though I think Andy Dalton was actually in the game when he got that touchdown. So go figure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that didn't help. So, I mean, looking at the Bears schedule, because I guess you can't help but look at that. The loss of the Rams, obviously, again, Bengals next week, Browns after that, Lions, Raiders, Packers, Bucks. So they have a tough gauntlet, and they're missing the Lions. That might be their surefire win in those first few games. Yeah. So yeah, this schedule when I looked at it when it came out originally doesn't seem to look as easy as it did before. So
Yes, that
yeah,
works out. Once you get that first out, it's like, oh shit, we got
yeah,
to some more W's.
exactly. So we'll see what happens with that. But that was week 1, bro. Definitely excited football's back. I mean, baseball will always be my number 1 sport, but something hits different when week 1 the NFL happens. So I think because it's only once a week, it kind of gives you that chance to get excited about it.
You mean it's only once a week? What about Thursday?
Well,
What about Monday?
The Thursday and Monday games are usually pretty weak, so I don't really look at that as games. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, no,
I
no
feel
offense,
I
no
feel
offense
like
to
you got to choose positivity here, bro. That's 3 days. That's 3 days potentially of football. Choose
nah,
positivity, bro.
nah. I'm good. Let's honestly, bro. Unless the Bears, I mean this, and maybe this makes me not a fan, but pretty much unless the Bears or the Bears are either on the Thursday game or Monday game, I usually don't bother watching because it's usually not a good game. Teams are not, it's because usually not good teams are not interested in. So it's like, why bother?
I mean, why would you?
There you go. What do I always say though? If you like us, why wouldn't you? Well, if I don't like you, who's playing them, then that's why I wouldn't. So there you go.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's like the Thursday game this week was Tampa Bay and Dallas.
That was pretty good. It's a pretty good
From,
game.
from what I saw from the highlights and the score,
And
yeah, it was a good game. But for me personally, there was nothing going on in that game that would really interest me in watching it. Obviously, I'm not watching the Cowboys for obvious reasons. And why do I want to watch Tom Brady? For what? No
for who?
thanks. No
For what?
thanks. Yeah. So
Yeah, man. From my perspective, I'm just hoping Dak has a great season. I'm not even a Cowboys fan. I'm a Dak Prescott fan. You know, this guy's dealt with a lot of shit in his life personally and professionally. He came up, said, Dallas, y'all need to pay me. Shit, I'm carrying y'all. And then he has this catastrophic injury last year. Um, so I hope that, he has a successful campaign, if for no other reason than for him personally. Because, a lot of players don't always come back from an injury like that. So best of luck to him. Yeah, I am looking forward to a wonderful NFL season. And I hope we can find more ways to talk about the league, even though it may not be an entire segment for the foreseeable next 17 damn weeks.
yeah, folks, I can guarantee we're not going to talk about the NFL every week. I guarantee that. So don't get scared. We're going to do that. Okay. It's not going to be every week. It was just today because week one happened. We're all excited about that. So it's not going to be every week. So don't worry. You're safe. For those
Yeah,
of you who don't like sports.
yeah. I maintain that even if you didn't like sports, you loved hearing us talk about sports because we would make you love it. Okay.
Well, in your thought of staying positive, I'll say, sure.
That's great, man. All right. That concludes our NFL opening weekend segment. Coming up, we'll close up the show with our observations and goodbyes.